Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Today we welcome Professor Taras Kuzio, an expert in Ukrainian politics at the National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. We're discussing the explosive revelation by Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies of a major drone procurement scam uncovered just days after their independence was restored following mass protests. With high-level arrests and international attention, this case raises critical questions about Ukraine's wartime governance, anti-graft efforts, and its European future. Professor Kuzio, thank you for joining us and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good to see you, sir. So talk us through the actual scandal. What happened? What was being done?
Well, about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, there was a very rushed vote in the Ukrainian parliament, which led to the stripping away of the independence of two key anti-corruption bodies created during Petro Poroshenko's presidency after the Euromaidan revolution. There were mass protests around Ukraine, not only in Kiev, and many of these protesters were actually very young. We're talking teenagers of early 20s people, so that was a very good sign. And then there were also, of course, protest condemnations from the European Union and other bodies. And so President Zelensky had to do a very, I guess, embarrassing U-turn, and he rearranged a vote in parliament with slightly modified legislation, which returned the independence of these bodies. Ukraine is a parliamentary presidential system. What he had done, in effect, was move Ukraine towards a presidential system where these bodies would be under the president. The whole point of these independent anti-corruption bodies is that they are not controlled by the president, and therefore they can be prosecuting anybody.
Well, they seem to be doing exactly that. Can you focus just for a second, please, about the drone scandal and what led to the arrests?
Well, we haven't heard of any arrests yet. Maybe there have been some detentions, but one of the first items that was unveiled as soon as these two bodies received their independence again was that there was some kind of corruption scandal in the procurement system between the government giving out contracts to private contractors, and probably some kind of bribery or scams involved. I'm actually personally not surprised in the light of what is taking place in Ukraine, but it's good that this has been unveiled, and let's hope these people go to jail.
Well, I mean, what does the timing of this tell you? I mean, it comes right on the heels of Sapo and Nabu, having their independence, autonomy returned to them. Is there something that we can learn from that timing?
Well, these investigations take a long time, so I don't think the investigation just took a day as soon as they became independent again. The investigations must have been ongoing, and maybe this was one of the reasons why there was a panic in the president's team that somebody was involved in their team or close to their political force, the Servant of People Party. So I suspect that is the link, that the taking away of their independence was an attempt to close down ongoing investigations, which have now reopened because they've become they've had their independence returned.
So can I understand clearly what you're suggesting, that when their independence was taken away and then returned later, this was in order to conceal the outcome of an investigation that those two bodies were carrying out?
Yes, I mean, I think that that was the crucial area. There have been various Ukrainian publications pointing to members of President Zelensky's Servant of the People party in the Ukrainian parliament, who these two bodies were investigating, and so this was an attempt to close down those investigations. But I think the bigger picture is that this kind of thing is going to be inevitable in a stagnating democracy, because Ukraine is at war and it can't allow local or parliamentary or presidential elections. It can't allow that. That means there's no turnover of politicians, and unfortunately, Western policy is not going to lead to the war ending soon. And that means that this kind of democratic stagnation is going to continue, because you can't have elections whilst there's martial law and a war going on. So
Right.
I think this kind of problem is going to continue.
Understood. I mean, although I think to be fair, corruption does exist around the world. However, Ukraine has always had this reputation, justified or otherwise, of being a little bit more corrupt than most or many countries around the world, and that has been a point of discussion in many forums, for example, joining the European Union. What do you say to those accusations? And do these arrests or detentions tell you something about how corruption is being dealt with?
Well, the whole question of corruption is one fraught with hypocrisy, because let's be frank, Ukraine was only treated as a European country after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, when the EU finally offered Ukraine membership. So for 30 years after the USSR disintegrated, after communism ended, Ukraine was not regarded as a member of the European family. Suddenly it is. And the excuse was always, oh, Ukraine's too corrupt. But the problem with this argument is that, not that Ukraine's not corrupt, I absolutely accept that, but that where's the money going from, this corrupt money? This corrupt money is going to Europe. It's not going anywhere else. It's going to London, Austria, Cyprus, Monaco, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and elsewhere. So when the finger is pointed about corruption, yes, it's pointed to the source of the corruption, ignoring the fact that this corruption then ends up in the European Union. There is a reason why London was nicknamed Londongrad, or Moscow on the Thames. And so we should look at corruption from both sides. Why are Ukrainian prosecutors, including from NABU and SAPU, finding it so difficult to extradite corrupt Ukrainian officials from European Union countries? They're being protected in those countries. So the problem with the way we look at corruption is that we need to look at it from both sides, where it comes from, the dirty money, and where the dirty money goes. And unfortunately, we have to be doing that.
Understood. Now, Professor, in the last minute or so that we have left, one other question. How does President Zelensky come out looking after this series of events?
Well, he comes out looking as a democratic leader, in the sense that he listened to the protesters. He listened to
but he was the one that instigated taking away the powers in the first place. So, as you say, an embarrassing U-turn.
Show me a politician that's never made a mistake. Show me a politician that's never made a mistake. They're human beings. I would be very critical. I am very critical of Zelensky for doing this, but kudos to him that he didn't act like the typical local leader like in Russia and just repressed those protesters. He allowed the protesters to show their anger. That had an impact on him quickly reversing his mistake. He listened to European leaders, Western leaders as well. And so I think he acknowledged that this was a screw-up.
Understood.
There's no question about it.
Professor, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much for
Thank
inviting
you.
me.
Bye-bye. That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Stay tuned, lots more coming up. Goodbye.